Website security can be a bit of a nightmare with new beginners. So in this topic, we're going to learn how to set up firewalls, and we're going to learn to scan your website for malware. So what is a firewall? So what a firewall is it restricts access to data packets from your server to your device. Now, that might sound a little bit complicated, but really it's very simple. If you imagine it like a bouncer outside of a nightclub. Now, the bouncer stands at the front door, and as all the customers coming in, it allows them in one by one, and also it can restrict access to customers that are underage. So just in the same way, your firewall can restrict users, IP addresses, and malware from entering your database. So what is malware? So malware is the umbrella term for software that is installed onto your database with malicious content. Malware can be things like viruses, Trojan horses, or even worms. Now, if you want to learn a little bit more about what those specific things are, just read in the article and we'll go into that in a bit more detail. So all of this can be quite confusing and can also be quite expensive, but you need to make sure that your website is secure and safe. There are a lot of companies out there. There's a great company called Securi, and what they do, they can actually go into your database, find the malicious malware, remove it, and then also offer you firewall protection. So that is a great service, but those services can be, around $300, maybe even more for the year. So what we want to do is we want to show you a free software that will give you all the things that we've just mentioned. It is worth noting that this is a free software, so because it's free, it might not be 100% accurate and things can slip through the firewall. So what we always recommend is install the free firewall, and then if you do get any problems down the line, you can then go to a company like Securi, and they can go through all your files, take out the malicious content, and then you go onto their firewall server. For your needs, this free plugin should help you. So what is the plugin called? Well, there are many out there, but we like to use a plugin called WordFence. So WordFence has the ability to work as a firewall, blocking the connections between your servers and between browsers or malicious content. It also has the ability to scan your website, and you can either do that manually or set up an automatic scan every so often. That will scan through all your website database, and it will prompt you if they see any content in there which could be malicious or needs addressing. Now, a lot of the time with WordFence, the settings can be quite tricky to get right, and you could be notified when a plugin becomes out of date. And as we know from before, if a plugin is out of date, it does open up potential backdoors for hackers to get into your site. So it's just notifying you to let you know that, really. And you can then update it at that point. But don't go into panic mode if you keep getting all these emails. If you keep your website updated on, say, like a 2-weekly or 4-weekly basis, then your website should be secure. An additional feature of WordFence is their brute force protection. Now, this is actually a really good feature, and what it does is it stops bots or people from spamming your website. Now, the way it works is that you can set up a set of rules. If someone tries to log into an account, say maybe 10 times or 20 times, and every single time they're logging in wrong, then you can actually blacklist or block that IP or user straight away. Because what happens is bots will end up crawling your website. They'll find out where your login to your back office URL is located, and they'll actually start guessing on email addresses like admin or info at, and then your website's name, and then they'll just keep guessing password after password after password, hoping that eventually they'll get the right one. So what we want to do is we want to block those and blacklist those from entering our website. So you can actually set the password failures from 20 to 10 to even 1. We recommend around 10 is a good figure, and anything more than that, you're kind of opening yourself up to risk, and anything below, you might find that your actual users end up blacklisting themselves by accident, and it's a bit of a nightmare. So 10 is a good number. You can also block specific usernames. So for example, we never recommend using admin because that's the first username they try and guess, these hackers or the bots. So you can actually set it up so that when they type in the word admin and try and log in for the first time, it actually blacklists them straight away. It's a really useful feature. Now, what typically happens is it will blacklist it for 3 to 4 hours. And what you find is that as soon as it gets blacklisted, the bot actually moves on to another site. It realizes that you actually do have a basic level of security and it's not worth its time. So it's really good to kind of weed them out. If you don't have it, they'll just keep guessing and keep guessing and keep guessing until they get it right. So that's WordFence in a nutshell. Let's look at installing it and let's look at how we can optimize it to keep your website secure. Okay, so we're in our back office here. Now let's look at how to install and activate WordFence. So we've already installed all our plugins before, but I'm just going to show you now where WordFence actually is. So if you go to add new and type in WordFence, and this is the plugin here that we want to install. So if you haven't installed that already, just click install now and follow through to activate. Once you've done that, head back to your plugins. And here we'll be asked to begin our WordFence installation. So we need to put in our email address. Now this is the email address they're going to email you if there's any problems with your WordFence or any security issues on your website. So make sure it's an email that you have access to. And just agree to their privacy policy. And we don't want any marketing. Click continue. We don't have the premium license because we're just going to go for the free version today. So we click no thanks. And with that set up, we can then head over to WordFence. Just remove some of these errors. And we want to automatically enable update. So next we're going to configure WordFence, and this is actually quite easy. So at the top here we can see click here to configure. And it will give you, there could be loads of different options, but this time it's given us this Apache Plus mod_PHP. So click that to download it. And that will then just download it onto your desktop. You need to keep this somewhere safe. This is just the previous settings that WordFence has changed. So if there are any problems, you've got this as a backup to go back to. So once you've downloaded that, you can then click continue. And with that now done, your firewall is in place, which is great. So straight off the bat, we've already got 100% brute force protection. So as mentioned previously, it stops bots or hackers from trying to guess your usernames or your passwords and getting access to your website. So straight off the bat, you can just leave it as it is. And we're going to take a few minutes to just tweak the settings and make it a little bit more secure. And as you can see here, it's in learning mode. And what this means is that it will continue to look at how visitors interact with your website. And moving forwards, once it's collected enough information, it will set up specific protocols. You can, at any point, turn it off and just have it as enable protecting. And also once it's finished learning mode and your site's been active for a little bit more time and there's a bit more traffic for it to kind of look over and data to deal with, you can also put it back onto learning mode again. So we're going to go to all options. And I'm just going to expand all so I can go through each one and see what needs changing. So most of this stuff here can stay. And we're going to change our email alert preferences. Straight off the bat, WordFence's email preferences can be a little bit sensitive, which means that every single time either a plugin, there's a new update has been pushed, or a theme is out of date, you'll get an email to notify you. Now, you don't need to update your plugins every single time there's an update, so we want to just tweak those settings so that we're not getting constantly spammed. So you can either enable or unable a weekly summary. I don't really see the advantage, so I'm going to disable that, and you can always add them later. Firewall's okay, we've already set that up. This section's also fine. And here we're going to focus on brute force protection. So as I just said, this stops bots from trying to guess your password. Now I'm going to put the password attempt failures down to 10, because even with your users, they're not really going to be getting the password wrong 10 times. Most people will get it wrong 4 or 5 times, and then they'll request a password reset. 4 hours is long enough, and that should hopefully be enough time for the bots to move on to a site that's less secure than yours. This is quite a good feature, and this is a feature that blocks specific usernames. So we're going to add the username admin. To create the box, you just hit the comma. You might have missed it then on the screen recording. And we're also going to put, as it's a PODTech website, we're going to put PODTech as the username that will also be blocked. So now if anyone comes onto our website and tries to guess the password for admin, whether it's once, twice, 30 times, they'll be blocked instantly. Enforce strong passwords is always a good thing. And we're going to also enforce it for all members, which means that our users will also need to have a strong password. Again, this stops people from registering if there's not an admin user already, and it stops them from getting that admin username. This is how Google interacts with your websites. So it will limit most crawlers except for Google's crawlers, which is good because you want Google to be indexing your website. And here we can look at our scanning. So we have scheduled scanning enabled, so every so often it will automatically scan your website. And we're going to leave it at standard. If you do feel like you have been hacked, you can switch it to high sensitivity and then force a manual scan. This can all stay. This can all stay. And that's everything for that section there. So we're going to hit Save Changes. Okay, so now we're going to look at how to force a scan. So to do that, let's go to Scan. And you can see here already it's done a scan previously and there's a vulnerability that it's found. So it hasn't given us the information here in this box, so let's just run a new scan to see what the issue is. Now, as you can see here, it will go through each of these different settings, and there'll be a little blue tick will appear as it's cleared. If there's a vulnerability or an issue that needs addressing, there'll be a yellow box. Now, 9 times out of 10 when there's a vulnerability scan issue, it tends to be that there's a plugin that hasn't been updated, or you need to update your theme or WordPress itself. So always don't panic. You'll see the results here at the bottom and we can look at it accordingly. I'm going to skip forward to the end of the scan so that we can see where it goes from there. So the scan's finished and actually there was no vulnerability issues. I think the problem was when I actually came onto the website before this recording, there was a plugin that was out of date and I updated that before I started. So now that I've run the scan again, there's no vulnerability issues and everything is okay. So that's all there is to it really.